The Dallas Cowboys lost to heartbreak Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday evening, and the result of the game was even more crushing when you realize how close victory was. The game of inches wasn't in Dallas's favor against Philadelphia, even as the Eagles gifted the Cowboys almost the entire field in penalties late in the fourth quarter, with Dallas in desperation mode.
Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Life's too short for boring weekends. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time is the go-to app for last-minute tickets to all your favorite events. From thrilling sporting games and captivating concerts to unforgettable theater performances. They've got it all covered. Get the best seats at the best price right at your fingertips instantly. No more waiting in lines. No more exorbitant ticket prices. So why wait? Experience the magic of the moment with Game Time. Live for the now. Game Time, your ticket to a fantastic time. Use the link in the description and you can help support the channel when you buy your tickets to your next event.
Before we dive into today's episode, we'd like to remind you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Just search Big B Breakdown. And of course, leave us a comment in the comment section below what you thought about Dallas's performance this past Sunday. Without further ado, let's dive into today's first topic. We're going to take a look at 3 winners and 2 losers in the Cowboys' loss to the Eagles in Week 9. CeeDee Lamb was unstoppable. Turpin should play over Gallup, and Dak Prescott gave his all on this loss. It was the 3rd loss of the season for the Dallas Cowboys. This one hurt the most. On the road against the one-loss Philadelphia Eagles, the Cowboys had their eyes set on first place. A win would put them just a half game out, and with the tiebreaker and Philly being on a bye in Week 10, they could have taken the top spot with a win next week over the Giants. They weren't able to set that up, unfortunately, with the Eagles securing a 28-23 victory. Even with the loss, there was a lot to take away from this one, both good and bad. That's what we focus on now with the Week 9 studs and duds. Starting off with our stud, KaVontae Turpin. Last week, Turpin had a huge kick return that helped set the offense up with a short field. He also had a punt return for a touchdown, but that one didn't count as Wright was called for a penalty on the return. This week, he picked up where he left off. Turpin's first return came in the first quarter, and he nearly got the ball to midfield with a 47-yard run back. That drive ended with a touchdown from Jake Ferguson, which tied the game up at 14. He was then on the field for Dallas in a critical situation in the second quarter, facing a 3rd and goal. Dak Prescott threw a pass to Turpin in the end zone. He was able to haul it in for his second receiving touchdown of the year. Turpin even showed off some impressive awareness on the play. After the score, the catch was reviewed on replay since the ball moved after he had his hands on it. Turpin was deemed to have possession since he wisely put his left hand under the ball. Because of that, the officials ruled it a catch, despite the movement. Cowboys stud? Sad to say, Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy gets a lot of unfair criticism. While Sean Payton is praised as an amazing coach, McCarthy has a very similar winning percentage. He also won a Super Bowl in 2010, which is more recent than Payton, who won the prior season. Having said that, there are some very fair critiques thrown his way. One of those is how bad he can be when it comes to time management. An example of this came in their win over the Los Angeles Chargers when McCarthy elected to run the clock down to kick a field goal before the half. Every team owner, Jerry Jones, was less than thrilled with the decision since there was more than enough time to get another playoff. This weekend, McCarthy had a couple of miscues. One was early in the first. On the Eagles' opening drive, they were able to convert a 4th and 1 from their own side of the field. The problem is they should have been in a 4th and 2. Jalen Hurts was stopped short of the line. The replay showed an incredibly favorable spot for Philly. Had McCarthy challenged, they might have elected to punt. He then wasted far too much time at the end of the game. Dallas was driving in an attempt to steal the win, and McCarthy slowed his offense down. Not only was this a mistake since it gave them under a minute for the last-ditch effort, but the hurry-up was getting it done. McCarthy and the Cowboys are far from done, and they might even find a way to beat the Eagles at home when they play Week 14. But this is one they wanted in the worst way, and McCarthy didn't do enough to secure the victory. Our third stud, CeeDee Lamb. There were several players on offense who could have been called a stud on this one, including Jake Ferguson and Jalen Tolbert. They each had a touchdown, came up big in moments. Having said that, there was no skill player who did more for the Cowboys in Week 9 than CeeDee Lamb. He came into the game with back-to-back 100-yard games and then made it 3 in a row. Lamb was on the receiving end of 11 passes and had 191 yards. He even caught a pass late, but there was no one near him to try and pitch the ball to, as the other pass catchers seemed to be watching to see if he could pull out a miracle. While Lamb wasn't able to come through on this play, no one would have been able to, honestly. He did show up in several big moments. The first was on 4th and 1 on the Cowboys' second drive. Lamb ended up getting wide open for a 29-yard gain, setting up Ferguson for a 4-yard touchdown. He was also instrumental on their second touchdown drive. This time, he caught a 20-yard pass, 3rd and 14, just a couple of plays before Turpin caught his touchdown. Lamb has developed into a true number 1 wideout and is one of the best in the game. Sadly, there's no true number 2 wideout with him, able to take advantage of all the attention he commands. Our dud, Terrence Steele. Steele is a great story in the NFL, undrafted free agent out of Texas Tech. He developed into one of the better offensive linemen in the NFL last season. He was so good, Dallas extended him in the offseason, signing him to a 5-year, $86.8 million contract. Problem is, Dallas signed him to that massive deal before seeing how he would recover from a major knee injury. Steele was gone in Week 14 last year, and when he tore his ACL and MCL, hasn't looked the same in 2023. What's most frustrating about this decision is how the Cowboys did the same thing last year with Michael Gallup, also coming off an ACL tear, yet didn't learn from their mistake. This loss stung, and while it's hard to put it on any one player, Steele does deserve a lot of the blame. He had no chance against Josh Sweat or Brandon Graham, as he gave up the majority of the 5 sacks Prescott suffered. And so, Bob Stum pointed out he gave up 8 pressures for the second time this year. Steele was the one who gave up a sack late in the team's final drive, which forced them to try a final pass from the Philadelphia 27. That was just a couple of plays after they had moved to the 6-yard line and appeared ready for an upset. Our next stud, Dak Prescott. As is always the case when Dallas loses, someone is going to try and say Dak Prescott choked. While it's true he couldn't get a touchdown at the end, he wasn't the one who lost this game. Prescott did what he's been doing for the past several seasons, carrying this team on his back while they make mistakes. Prescott's only real miscue came when he stepped out of bounds on a 2-point conversion, but there were plenty of more blunders that made it to where he had to play perfectly. There was the easy drop from Gallup on 3rd and 3, the hold on Luke Shoemaker that killed a promising drive in the second half. There was also a missed touchdown from Shoemaker when he didn't get far enough into the end zone, and Jake Ferguson didn't draw the safety away on his route. All of that led to Dallas needing Prescott to pull a rabbit out of his hat. He was given the ball deep in Philadelphia with under 1 minute to go and no timeouts. Somehow he was quickly at the Eagles' 6-yard line, but then the offensive line gave out. Tyler Smith was hit with a false start. Steele was beat for an 11-yard sack. Despite all the issues, Prescott had 374 yards with 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. He did enough to win and was an absolute stud on Sunday. So on to our next topic. We're going to dive into 3 players who deserve to be benched after this disappointing Week 9 loss. The Dallas Cowboys lost a heartbreaker to the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday night The result of the game was even more crushing when you realize how close a victory was. The game of inches wasn't in Dallas's favor against Philadelphia, even as the Eagles gifted the Cowboys almost the entire field and penalties late in the fourth quarter with Dallas in desperation mode. When you break down a game like this, you obviously want to find out what players played the biggest part in losing a divisional game with massive implications, and then make necessary changes to the depth chart. Which Cowboys players need to be benched after an inexcusably bad play against the Eagles? So let's take a look at a trio of names that we offer. Number 1, Terrence Steele. Wow. Just wow. To say that Steele played a bad game against the Eagles would have to be the understatement of the year. I mean, you could argue that if any individual player cost the Cowboys this game, it would be Steele. And that's really a brutal way to look at an entire game, which is played by a team. But take a look at some of these figures. Steele allowed 12 pressures, 7 hurries, and 4 sacks, with a pass block rate of 15. That's staggering when you look back at the game and how close it was despite this performance. What was particularly disturbing about this performance is how great the Cowboys' passing game played just about the entire game. But with Philadelphia's pass rush getting home late in the game, Dallas was unable to complete the comeback. I don't know exactly what the situation is with Dallas and Steele, at least in terms of outright replacing him, but this type of performance not be tolerated going forward. Number 2, Michael Gallup. I think it's clear at this point that the Cowboys need to keep giving more and more snaps to guys like Jalen Tolbert and KaVontae Turpin, as opposed to Michael Gallup. The ineffectiveness when Gallup is on the field has simply gone on too long for the Cowboys. Yes, they're paying him a good amount of money, but when the passing game is rolling like it was for much of the game against Philadelphia, how can this be tolerated? Gallup has just 2 games this entire season in which he had more than 24 yards receiving. Those 2 games came against the Arizona Cardinals and the New England Patriots, 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. And the Cowboys lost that Cardinals game. Things have been getting worse for Gallup since the Chargers game a few weeks back, when he had 10 targets and just 3 total receptions. The production from other guys in the passing game stepped up against Philadelphia, with Tolbert, Cooks, and tight end Ferguson making much more of an impact on the game than Gallup. At some point, the Cowboys are going to have to move on in terms of the snaps they are giving Gallup. Number 3, Jordan Lewis. The Cowboys would like to ask for a mulligan on the Kelvin Joseph trade. Please? Can we do that? The 2023 season has not been kind to cornerback Jordan Lewis. The rough year continued against the Eagles, where the Eagles' passing attack seemingly picked on wherever Lewis was at on the field for the Cowboys. Lewis had just 1 pass breakup in 7 games this season. According to Pro Football Reference, Lewis is averaging 12.9 yards per completion allowed into his coverage, along with 3 touchdowns and a QB rating of 109.5. That final number would be the worst in Lewis's NFL career up to this point if it holds up. Quarterbacks are simply too efficient when throwing the ball into Lewis's coverage. We saw more of that against the Eagles, including against tight end Dallas Cowboys, which really frustrated Cowboy fans during the game. Perhaps defensive coordinator Dan Quinn will have to get creative here, because what is even on roster solution for the Cowboys in the slot? Do they need to look to free agency or pluck someone off of another team's practice squad? Or do they just keep hoping it gets better with Jordan Lewis while other teams continue to pick on him? In our next topic, a new angle of Prescott's missing wide open tight end on 4th down. It's going to haunt Cowboys for a very long time. The Cowboys couldn't have asked for more from Dak Prescott on Sunday. He piled numerous A-plus performances in his career. So it speaks volumes, so many talking heads calling this arguably the best performance of his career. Prescott proved that he can show up at championship moments, which is something that's followed him throughout his career. While the Cowboys came up short against the Eagles, Prescott put the team on his shoulders throughout the game. He answered the bell on every gotta-have-it drive, keep Dallas within striking distance in the second half. Another positive takeaway from Prescott's performance, is his growing chemistry with tight end Jake Ferguson. The two connected 7 times on 10 targets for 91 yards and a touchdown. What's crazy is that the Cowboys might have won the game if Prescott looked Ferguson's way one more time. On 4th and 8, and late in the fourth quarter, Prescott overthrew Jalen Tolbert on a curl route. If you look toward the middle of the field, you'll notice a wide open Ferguson pleading for the ball. Ferguson might find the end zone for that go-ahead touchdown. Prescott hit him in stride. This is haunting. The worst part is Dallas's pass rush actually held up on the play. The Eagles generated a whopping 13 pressures in the fourth quarter alone. Prescott wasn't hurried, but he forced the ball to Tolbert after he came off his initial read. If you take a second look at the highlight at the 3-second mark, you'll see just how much real estate Ferguson had in front of him. Among the leading leaders of the tight end position in yards after the catch for reception, not crazy to think that the 24-year-old found his way in the end zone needing just 15 yards. We hate to nitpick Prescott after the performance. I mean, he's the least of the Cowboys' concern. But Sunday was a game of inches. Missing Ferguson on this 4th down proved to be costly. A game Dallas lost by 5 points. Next time, we'll bet on Prescott linking with his new favorite security blanket. Until then, his highlight will live on Cowboy fans' nightmares. And now we're going to take a look at the predictions, odds, spread, injuries, and trends for Week 10. After suffering a hard-fought loss to the Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys returned to Jerry World to play the New York Giants on Sunday. Dallas had its 2-game winning streak snapped last week in a 5-point loss to the Eagles. But they should have much better luck against the Giants, who have dropped 6 out of their past 7 games and lost starting quarterback Daniel Jones, who had torn an ACL. Can the Cowboys keep pace with the Eagles in the NFC East? Or will the Giants finally snap their 4-game road losing streak? So let's break down this Week 10 matchup, give our prediction using odds from DraftKings. Currently, the Giants are 1-4 ATS on the road this season. The under is 7-0 in the Giants' last 7 games. Cowboys are 3-0 ATS at the home this season. Cowboys are 11-0 straight up in their past 11 games. The Giants' injury report: we have Daniel Jones out, Tyrod Taylor, quarterback, IR, Graham Gano at kicker, IR. Evan Neal is questionable. Corbin, running back, is questionable. And for the Cowboys, currently it's just Leighton Vander Esch who is on the IR. The game time for the Cowboys is 4:25 Eastern at AT&T Stadium. On Sunday evening, you can catch it on Fox. Giants' current record is 2-7. The Cowboys' record is 5-3. Some of the key players to watch for the Giants is Saquon Barkley. Cowboys, it's CeeDee Lamb. And now for our prediction and pick. After coming up short against the Eagles, the Cowboys get a break facing a Giants offense that has struggled to score points this season. 11.2 points per game. DeVito won't change that, even though the Giants allowed him to throw the ball more. The last time we saw the Cowboys at home, they dismantled the Rams 43-20. Matthew Stafford under center. 16-point spread is a lot of points to lay in the NFL game, but we've seen Dallas blow out teams at home this season. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you think the Cowboys will do against the Giants at home? Give us your predictions. And now, on to our next topic. The Cowboys have just pulled their typical Jerry Jones move by signing a troubled receiver who hasn't played since 2018. With the Cowboys hoping to improve the offense after Sunday's disappointing loss to the Eagles, Jerry Jones signed a wideout who hasn't been in the NFL since God's Plan by Drake was at the top of the Billboard 100. So sure, why the heck not? In case you didn't miss it, or in case you did miss it, Jones and the Cowboys decided to bring in troubled wideout Martavis Bryant, recently reinstated by Commissioner Roger Goodell for a workout on Tuesday. Didn't take long for the Cowboys front office to put a contract on the table. We're not sure what's more eye-opening, the fact that Bryant is signing with the Dallas, or that Shams is taking a break from flirting with Kay Adams and breaking NBA news to drop this massive update on America's team. Bryant hasn't played in the league since 2018. Early on in his career with the Steelers, no one could question the speedster has a monster potential. He simply could not keep himself out of trouble. 2015, he was suspended for a substance abuse violation. Then he was suspended for the entire 2016 campaign. The 6'4", 210-pounder was then traded to the Raiders, but he was suspended indefinitely in 18. He forgot about Bryant. Hey, no one blames him for that. Now he's back on good terms with Goodell, and he did more than enough during his workout with Dallas to land a second chance. The Dallas wide receivers room is led by CeeDee Lamb, who's lived up to the hype as a starting receiver, posting 11 receptions and a career-high 191 yards versus the Phillies in Week 9. Other than that, the other receivers haven't gotten the job done for Prescott and company. Enter Bryant. For his career, the newest Cowboy has 145 receptions, 2,183 yards, 17 touchdowns to his name. Bryant is 31 years old, and his best football is behind them. Despite that, Jones is taking a bit of a risk on him. But let's see how this goes, Dallas fans. Give us your thoughts on this new signing. Do you think it's going to work out, or do you think it's going to be one long, horrible nightmare? And that's all we have for this episode. Let us know your thoughts on the topics we covered in the comment section below. Is there something we missed? Something we got wrong? Let us know. Of course, if you want to support the channel, go ahead, buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/thebigd. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you next time.